Hi folks, welcome back to Game Geeks. I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Today's episode, we are reviewing 2 books for the World of Darkness line. Again, these are in the Mortals line, which is kind of where I want to stay for now, because I think that's where a lot of the really interesting ideas are being produced for the World of Darkness game. The 2 we're reviewing today are Tales from the 13th Precinct and Second Sight, and we're going to do them in that order. So let's talk about Tales from the 13th Precinct. One of the very common tropes for horror games is that you're looking into the weird stuff that's going on for a reason. Now, the big problem with this is most characters don't have a good motivation for wanting to do that. I mean, okay, let's take me, for example. I'm a chemistry professor. I have a degree in engineering. I'm a father of 3. And all of a sudden, some wacky, zany stuff with monsters and spirits and my car tries to eat me happens right outside my door. I'll be very honest with you. My first motivation is not, let's go see why that is and endanger my sanity and my family and everything I hold dear. My first motivation is, and run and hide and soil myself. Now, while protecting my family. The alternative to that most gamers use is the private eye. Because with the private eye, you have a lot of the reasons for being a cop without all the paperwork that goes with it, but also without a lot of the authority and rank. Now, that works a lot, but I've done the private eye thing to death. I mean, most of us have that have played these sorts of games. The private eye is a great trope in Call of Cthulhu. It's a great trope in this. It's a great trope in Unisystem. So, back to the original point, what Tales from the 13th Precinct does for you is it really gives you a lot of background on playing policemen. It gives you the generic city of Midway, and it allows you to play in this precinct and it gives you what the different roles of the different kinds of policemen are. From the beat cop to the forensic person, what the forensic people really do, not what you see on CSI. Then you also see what the detectives do, the chain of command, how you have advantages and real limitations being a police officer in this sort of investigative game. It gives you a lot of sample policemen. It even talks about something that's really important that I've never really thought of putting in, the policeman's bar. The bar that all the policemen go to afterwards, which is owned by, the daughter or granddaughter that comes from a police family. It's a really nice background. If you want to play a police-styled game, this book, in my opinion, is invaluable. It's almost the only one of its kind that I've ever come across that gives you a lot of good detail. Now, is it exciting detail? Honestly, no. Parts of it are kind of a dry read, but it's supposed to be very informative on what life as a policeman would be like if you had to investigate some of this zany, wacky stuff. The second book I'm going to be discussing is Second Sight. This treads very cautious ground because this book gives you some good ideas for psychic powers, magic, but not the Atlantean-style magic that powers Mage the Awakening. This uses more rote, defined ritual magic. And finally, the last part of the book gives you some ideas on how to use chthonic horrors, the monsters from outside reality that are trying to eat their way in your World of Darkness game. This, to me, ties in very nicely with the Book of Spirits, because what it allows you to do is you get a slightly more powered character, but these are not Akira-styled psychic abilities. It's really expensive to be able to move a chair across the room at a very slow rate. That costs a lot for you to buy during your point-based character creation. So don't think this is going to be the sort of, I use the power of my mind to set the building on fire. It's possible, but not very likely. You're better off setting the oily rags on fire, for example. And it really shows how the forces of darkness don't play nice with magic, with the psychic powers, that you can really get boned over by using these too often. What it allows you to do is it gives you sort of a nice additional edge that the mortal characters may not have, but it's not anywhere near as overpowering as it could have been. I think the best analogy for this would be something like The Shining. Stephen King's The Shining, where the kid is pretty clearly a psychic with some really good second sight and spiritual medium sorts of things, but my God, does he look like a yummy treat to that evil, evil hotel. The Dead Zone is another really good example of how these psychic powers don't always work that well for you in a dark fantasy setting. I like this book a lot. I think it probably has a more general use than Tales from the 13th Precinct would. This is, if you want to play a cop game, use this book. If you don't, it's really not that good for you. This has a lot more breadth of applicability simply because you could have your player characters have these attributes or your non-player characters, and it gives you a lot of ideas for how to weave these concepts in. For Game Geeks, I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Good day and good gaming.